In the year 2010, Vlad von Karstein revealed the nightmarish truth to the world. The Count of Sylvania stood upon the battlements of the castle Drakenhof and intoned a terrible incantation he had taken from one of the 9 books of Nagash. Fueled by the warpstone recovered from the city of Mordheim, Vlad's magic flowed over Sylvania, coiling through the unguarded gardens of Mor and pooling in open peasant graves. Across Vlad's land, the dead awoke. Skeletons clawed their way through the peaty soil. Zombies stirred in their muddy holes. Ghouls loped from their crypt lairs to worship their new master. With this act, Vlad von Karstein had thrown down the gauntlet to the Empire. The wars of the vampire counts had begun. Hey guys, and welcome back to Legendary Tabletop, to a very special Halloween episode. I hope you enjoyed that creepy, spooky intro, and today we are gonna do a spooky season themed build. And every campaign, whether it's D&D, Warhammer, or any sort of RPG tabletop war game, usually one of our big bads is the vampires. And so today on Legendary Tabletop, we're going to build a very cool vampires castle. I'm looking at some of not only the Warhammer lore, but a couple different things that really inspire me in order to make this castle unique. A couple things I've been looking at a lot these days is from the movie Dark Crystal, which is one of my favorite movies growing up. Concept artist Brian Froud came up with some really cool drawings, and if you've seen the movie, you know that it looks totally unique. And there is a creepy Skeksis castle in that movie that has this sort of organic feel to it. I'm looking at art from the Dark Crystal. I'm looking also at one of my favorite animes, Vampire Hunter D, as well. And there are sort of these elements to the castle that seem sort of taken over by necromantic energy, that sort of thing. Now, without further ado, let's get into the build. Alright, here we are in voiceover land, and I have some nice sheets of XPS foam, the 1-inch thick type, and I am going to stack several of these pieces to create a base for the vampire's castle with some cliffs overhanging using hot glue. And I found these freaky toys for the Final Faction line from the Dollar Tree here in the States. This crazy monster alien wheel death thing, and I was checking it out, and it reminded me of Castle Parapets, but naughty boy, bad evil dude, bad guy Parapets. And this also reminded me of some of the castle from the Dark Crystal, and I thought that these little plastic kits would be a great start to have some pieces to create the organic elements or the organic looking elements of the vampire's castle, along with some Halloween decorations, some plastic bones, and then I found some early Christmas ornaments that looked like those little, I don't even know what the heck you call them, but the little offshoots, embellishments in castles. And now I've taken some foam and created part of the beginning of the castle and glued in some of these weird pieces and left the openings towards the top to let the light in, and that will represent this part of the castle that has been taken over by evil energy. And then I cut some pieces to line up with the parapets here, and this is a nice easy win here. Just a normal piece that would be first off kind of flimsy because of being made from foam, but then also details like this would be very hard to carve and without a proxon. And I'm slowly adding some of these pieces here, filling some of the gaps with the glue. I use some of these bone pieces to create sort of columns that hold up this creepy part of the castle, and then slowly sort of building this castle that is slightly, say, like the castle in Lord of the Rings, Sauron's castle. It couldn't exist without the dark magic holding it together. Or, our dark magic is hot glue, but that's just part of the game, and starting to kind of look like something. And now I'm going to create some sort of rocky offshoots in order to kind of communicate in sort of a design aesthetic that there isn't nice people living here. And that is part of a lot of the design you see in movies and D&D and Warhammer. The bad guys hide out, the bad guys castle, home don't look too inviting. And so I'm just using my little box cutter here and kind of making the flat surfaces of the foam appear to be a little bit more organic. And then later on I'll come back with a hot wire tool and create some lines in there. And now I'm using some windows, some foam here to create some windows, and I'll line those with some mesh to create the sort of graded window. And then I'm going to start cutting up some of these plastic pieces in order and kind of fooling around with them and holding them up to the piece before I glue them a few times to kind of make sure that I'm getting everything sort of balanced and that it's looking the way that I want it to look. And then using our little scale goblin here, we sort of piece together some of the rock pieces, the skeleton pieces, the Christmas ornaments. We got our scale goblin in there. We kind of created a little piece that we're going to carve our doorway with, and it's starting to come together. Yeah, scale goblin, what's up, dude? What's up, man? We got to paint this guy one day so that he can look his best as when we use him to put on the platforms here. And we'll put some doors and things to create sort of access points, and I'm going to use my ballpoint pen here for the sort of stonework in the castle, and I'll use the hot wire tool with the larger piece, a little like almost like a piece that looks similar to a soldering iron, to carve the rock below. But for the castle itself, for the stonework, ballpoint pen is the best way to go. It takes a little bit more time, but looks quite nice in the long run. And our vampire's castle is coming along, starting to look like something. And now I'm going to take some wood pieces, some coffee stir sticks, and some jewelry chains, and we're going to create some trapdoors for the towers. They need some sort of access point if we're gonna use it for D&D. This kind of doesn't matter for Warhammer, but maybe we might use this for Mordheim. Maybe we might use it for D&D, that sort of thing. So, getting some tacky glue with some coffee stir sticks here, product of the year, and just spreading some tacky glue on some of the surfaces here. We could use hot glue here, but I feel like the long-term bond is a little bit better with the tacky glue. And the great thing about the tacky glue is that it dries clear, so it's a little bit less conspicuous than your hot glue might be. And I have some planks here that are sort of different but similar lengths here to kind of create that sort of realistic jank. The sort of unequalness will be good to communicate some sort of realness, even though this is a game piece, essentially a toy. But we're having fun with it, and everything is kind of coming together. You can see the texture and the brickwork is coming together. I've taken some beads and I've placed those onto the doors. I've used some hot glue to create some texture in a few spots and filled a few gaps here, and also placed the jewelry rings, little baby beads using tacky glue to create doorknobs and door handles and latches, etc. We cut some more pieces from the plastic toy, and part of that was this inside circle thing that kind of looks like a chaos emblem, something evil, sort of a creepy star type thing. We put that on a few spots in the building, and then a few weeks ago I got to attend a Bits Bash swap, and I got this really cool Blood Bowl sprue, vampire sprue. Now, I haven't really ever played Blood Bowl or messed with Blood Bowl, but they have some cool miniatures. So if you're looking for some fun proxies, some cool kit bashing bits, Blood Bowl is quite a nice resource. And then now, one of my favorite little tricks to seal a caulking that's going to seal the foam and make it a little bit sturdier for gameplay, for traveling to the store.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick second and talk about something very exciting coming to the world of Legendary Tabletop. Now, you all know this channel as a place where we talk about tabletop games, things that are related to fantasy and sci-fi, Dungeons and Dragons, Mordheim, Warhammer, that sort of thing, one-page rules, that sort of thing. But I have also been a big fan of science fiction my whole life. And a few years back, I actually started to work on my own science fiction IP, or intellectual property, as you might have heard. And I wrote 2 different novels to start to explore the lore of this world that I wanted to create and eventually turn into a really cool tabletop war game with its own miniatures, its own terrain, its own special rules and rule books, that sort of thing. But I thought that getting the lore really worked out before all this goes forward and we start working on videos related to that game here on the channel, that the lore is the most important thing. So we have these 2 novels that I have written And the first one, Apex Outsider Worlds, and it has a sequel, Book 2, so to speak, Apex Exodus. And this is a science fiction epic space fantasy novel that is inspired by things like Dune, Hyperion, Star Wars, Games of Thrones, and of course, inspired by a lifetime of playing Warhammer, Warhammer 40k, Mordheim, and the like. So I will leave a link below to Amazon, where you can buy both paperback and Kindle versions of these books. And it's a great way to support me and support the channel. And it's very exciting for me to finally put it out there. So thanks for watching my little spiel, and back to the video.
Alright, the painting has begun. The caulking has been left to dry for 24 hours, filling the gaps and making this piece a lot sturdier than it would be with just foam. And now I'm using some house paint that is mixed with some varnish and some PVA glue in order to give us a base to begin our painting. And this I had to apply in several layers, and that was mostly because there are so many little cracks and crevices with this organic spiky bad boy castle here, naughty boy castle, and had to let it dry a few times, which revealed a few spots which had not been painted. And after about a day of doing that, coming back, it was fine and all sealed. And so I took some brown craft paint, some purple craft paint, and some red craft paint in order to create a undertone, a base for the three different textures and elements are here. We have this sort of rock portion on the bottom. We have this like evil organic magic, necromantic energy, undead energy, lich type energy here, and then the final portion being the red of the castle. We're going to make the castle in red here, and also the wood will be brown, of course. And just going through here, letting it dry, a couple layers, creating some sort of layers here, and then eventually I will begin to dry brush some lighter tones of purples, lighter tones of reds, and lighter tones of browns onto those three different surfaces, and slowly but surely creating some depth to our piece, creating some interesting tones and lighting, etc. I have a couple of the cameras here set up and just admiring the sort of H.R. Geiger, alien looking thing going on here. And it definitely looked very cool. I almost wanted to keep it all black for a bit, but this is the vampire's castle, so we must paint. Maybe we'll get some more of these kits and make an H.R. Geiger castle. or a true homage to the Dark Crystal Castle. But yes, the red is coming along, and then we eventually move on to some lighter reds, almost red-orange, and dry brush that downward. And then I'm going to start doing some sort of texture detail on these bone type pieces with some purples. And now I'm going to start with sort of some little dots, some little dabs here, some little lines that are kind of all going in sort of the same direction, hitting the borders, hitting the raised pieces, and I'll keep kind of coming back and adding some highlights to this, adding more different shades of purple, going lighter and lighter, and that's going to give us it's going to add on to the texture, give us a little bit more than what the plastic piece gave us. And then now I'm going to move on using some actual miniature paints here. I'm going to use some Vallejo teal here in order to create a nice contrast between the doors, and then I'll also come back with some metallic copper and hit the knobs, and this is a nice contrast to the red portion. And slowly but surely our vampire's castle is coming together, and I'm getting excited to finally see it come together. It's past that ugly stage, it's starting to look kind of cool, and we'll finish with a bit of a dry brush on the bottom with a gray. And that concludes our build.
Well, friends, that concludes the build of the Vampire's Castle, and I hope you enjoyed this very special episode of Legendary Tabletop, a special Halloween episode. Hope you enjoy spooky season. Hope you get to collect lots of candy out there. And you guys all know what time it is. We're going to do it. Yes. We're going to roll that beautiful bead footage.